Sorry.
You got me again. That's not on audio. There you go.
That one. Yes, that was the gesture. Okay. Good morning, Timothy, once again. And thank you very much for reporting this Sunday morning once again. I think, yes, I can see your background. You are on your beautiful boat, Grims, in Katsuyama. And to everybody who has joined us just now or will join us in seconds, it's Japanese Politics One-on-One, the 224th episode with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Square, the longest-standing government relations and public policy firm in Tokyo, and me as a host, Maya Matsuoka. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We're going to talk about the latest happenings in Japanese politics, the developments here, and how they have been impacted by geopolitical events as well, and what is going probably to happen or what you can expect as we get closer to the upper house election this summer. Timothy.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning. Today is May 25th, 2025. Maya, this is episode number 224. My gosh, the hits just keep on coming. This is our last episode in May. Our next episode will be in June.
That's true, yes. It's the 25th today, and yeah, we'll be reporting once again on June the 1st.
That's right. So it's raining outside. As you said, I'm reporting once again from the port of Katsuyama, where the good ship Grims is berthed. It's raining outside, so I'm broadcasting from inside the cabin. And this is made possible by a donation, a contribution by Evan Burkowski to help us broadcast a little bit more securely, a little bit more strongly, even from inside the cabin. We weren't able to do that because of the Wi-Fi, but thank you very much, Captain Burkowski, for helping us set this thing up. So if you're not visually able to watch our broadcast, you don't know what the inside of Grims looks like. So we've got quite a few people who continue to listen in on Clubhouse because they're doing other things. But if you're watching on YouTube or on LinkedIn, we appreciate it. If you're watching on any channel, even today or later in the week, we really appreciate it. Our numbers have continued to increase, and we're very grateful for that. Let me get right to the beef of the issues. The yen closed out at 142.58. It weakened just a little bit over the last 2 days because of news that has flowed in over the last couple of days, but it's actually strengthened from this time last week. So I'd like to get into that a little bit. The Prime Minister was in town all last week. He is in town all this week. We've got a couple of delegations that are coming in, and they're drawn in because of the Expo. So the Expo, throughout the 6-month period of the Expo, they have national days that they dedicate or they highlight different countries. And there were 3 countries that were celebrated last week where their heads of state actually visited Japan. And there are a couple of more this week too, and it's rather significant, but no state visits. A state visit is considerably different. And we had the King of Denmark come in. It wasn't a state visit, even though he had dinner with the Emperor and the Empress. Let me see. The G7 finance ministers and central bankers met on Monday and Tuesday of this last week. There was some news that came out of that. Mr. Akazawa, the chief negotiator for Japan on the Trump tariffs, left for Washington, D.C. yesterday. It's a 3-day weekend in the United States, so I guess that was planned. I'm sure he knew of it, but he will probably be in the United States until maybe Wednesday, and then come back and report to the Prime Minister, and we'll have a lot of news to report to you next week. Also next week is the regularly scheduled Bank of Japan meeting that's always at the end of the month. We anticipate that. There was a resignation, the first resignation, Maya, of the Ishiba cabinet this last week. It was rather eventful. So the minister made a statement on Sunday. On Saturdays and Sundays, the not just the ministers, but politicians in general. They visit their home districts, they make speeches, they kiss babies. And he made a comment about the availability of rice, and it hit a nerve, and he was out by Tuesday. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. The pension reform legislation is now in discussion. It passed the LDP policy board so that they have their position established, and that happened last Friday. We talked about that. Then it went into deliberations this week, and it will continue this coming week. It only has less than 20 working days in the diet to pass one way or the other. And you might remember that the Constitutional Democratic Party said, if you don't push this bill forward for us to discuss it, we're going to support a no confidence motion. They passed that this time last week. And now the demand is, if you don't accommodate our issues, we're going to, so this no confidence motion threat is it just keeps looming over and over. There is speculation growing that after the upper house elections, excuse me, there is an opportunity for a grander coalition. That means the LDP would invite in one of the other opposition parties, probably an LDP light party, so that they can at least get legislation through. They can't do it now. They don't have enough votes in the lower house to push legislation through. They have to cajole, they have to bribe, they have to promise things, and it's just not working, and they will do anything to get out of this morass. And the opposition parties, on the other hand, say, kick the bums out. We've got them on their back heels. Let's join together. Let's make sure that we win in the upper house election. Let's maybe force through a no confidence motion so we can have a double election. We're going to talk about that. The Tokyo metropolitan elections, a precursor for the upper house elections, is on June 22nd. So today is the 25th. That's less than 25 days away. So 280 candidates for 127 seats. A lot to look forward to there. Let me see. The budget committee this last week has insisted that Hakubun Shimomura, who was one of the Gang of Five in the Seiwakai, who decided, let's just forget about what Mr. Abe said because he's dead now. Let's go back to that nice, comfortable process that we had where we would share the money that we were collecting from the Benkyokai. He has been summoned to testify, and that is, I already said precursor. It is a potential precursor for others in the Gang of Five to also show up, and this is just too pregnant to avoid. With the elections coming up in less than 60 days for the upper house, to have this constantly coming at the electorate and telling them, you know, the LDP is bad, it's just money and politics, let's kick those guys out and vote for somebody else. So those are the top hits, and then we can get into some of the other things in the very valuable Q&A session of our briefing. Maya, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much for this, Timothy. Nice, that's a nice cup. I imagine it's full of coffee, and I'm happy to know that you've got your first caffeine fix.
Well,
and
it's nice. It's nice broadcasting inside the cabin because it's comfortable. I'm not exposed to the elements, and the coffee is right here next to me, so it's nice.
Right. Okay. Before we continue with the details, I'm sorry for this. Please allow me to say thank you to our sponsors, and the first one of them is Kanchu. They are also known online as Kanchu.com. You can find them there. They're based in Yokohama, and they do projects in buying and selling real estate in the area of Yokohama, real estate investment and property management. So if you have any such projects in mind, please reach out to James Howell. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's quite active there. He writes some very nice informative posts and also very human posts as well there. So he's not that cold and unreachable business person. He's a very, very human, just like you and me. Yes, indeed. Please remember James Howell at Kanchu.com. James at Kanchu.com is the email, and you will find his contact details in the description of the YouTube video, or you can connect with him on LinkedIn if you haven't yet. Please do. And Timothy, now we're back to the main part of this briefing, the details, and maybe some other things that just happened this week, in addition to politics, of course.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya. The yen, as I said, closed out at $142.58 to the yen. It was a 0.58% decline from 2 days ago, but it strengthened considerably from last week when it was at 145. So the reason for this fluctuation this last week is because of the persistent differential for Japan's lower interest rate policy to combat domestic deflation. And that conflicts with other countries where their rates are elevated to tackle inflation. So higher returns in foreign currencies draw money to their currencies, in particular to the United States. And also because of market expectations. So there's a lot going on in the United States, the Trump tariffs, the Trump economy. It seems to be taking off. There are some areas that are holding back a little bit with employment and manufacturing moving into the United States. But there is speculation of future policy decisions and a cut by the Fed, which always impacts the value of the yen. And the reason why we always hit on the yen is because Japan is an export market. It's dependent on free trade and open communications and low tariffs. So the fact that the tariffs are in place now for automobiles, automobile parts, it's on pause, but it is sending shivers throughout the industry. And as we all know, the automobile and automobile parts manufacturing component of the Japanese economy is a huge boost, that export market. So it has a huge impact on the rest of Japan and the inflation rate and the cost of goods. So when the yen is strong, then exports generate more income. And when it's weak, then we have inflation that we're having right now. So there's a lot that the policymakers are focusing on, not only the tariffs that are being confronted, but also economic indicators, which are such as employment rate. So the employment rate, they just produced the report this last week. 98% of those people looking for a job over the last quarter could get a job. So there's low unemployment here. It's just that the wages are notoriously low and not keeping up with inflation. The Shinto wage offensive is concluding now, and excuse me, wages have increased about 5.3%, one of the largest increases. Last year was a little bit larger, but 5.3% overall. That's the major manufacturing companies that employ 1,000 people or more, but also that trickles down to small and medium companies as well, and which is why the pension reform legislation that is now in consideration in deliberations is so very important, because it's going to add just another layer of costs and income impact to employers and to the employees themselves. But a lot of it depends on what's going on with the central bank and with central bankers as well. And that's why this last week, the G7 central bankers and the Treasury secretaries met in Alberta. It's in preparation for the larger G7 meeting in June, where the Prime Minister and President Trump have committed to meet with each other on the sidelines. There was a telephone call just this last week. But I'd like to get into that different component of it just a little bit later. But like I said, Mr. Ishiba is in town all this week. He was in town all last week. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a busy diplomatic schedule that he must attend to as well. President Alexander Van der Bellen from Austria visited to attend the Expo and Austria's National Day. It wasn't a state visit, but he came with a huge delegation. President Tamás Suluk from Hungary was here once again. That was on Tuesday for their National Day at the Expo. Also, President Santiago Penna from Paraguay also visited. They had a national day in Osaka as well. And on Friday night, there was a 40-minute telephone conversation between Mr. Trump and Mr. Ishiba. This was a telephone conversation, interestingly enough, that was triggered by Mr. Trump. We need to talk. Can I have 45 minutes of your time? I want to talk about certain things about the G7, about moving forward, about the tariffs, about Mr. Akazawa coming to Washington D.C. This tomorrow. He left on Saturday, in fact. So they had a good conversation, just kind of teeing up another meeting that they're going to be having. They did commit to meeting on the sidelines for the G7 leadership meeting. Today arrives the Prime Minister from Montenegro. Montenegro also has a national day on the Expo. And also Wednesday, King Willem Alexander from the Netherlands visited. The king visited. He had dinner with the emperor and the empress. It's not a state visit. A state visit is very different from one of these courtesy calls. The prime minister didn't have any role in the meeting with the king, but Netherlands and Japan has a long history, 350 years. They're going to be celebrating their diplomatic relations. So it's a pretty big deal. I think the prime minister has already visited the Netherlands recently, and there's a lot of trade and diplomacy going on there. But as far as I could tell, there was no role for the prime minister while the king was in town. And he spent most of his time in Osaka and Kyoto, visiting the pavilions there. And you can tell just over the last 2 weeks, the expo has been open for probably a month now. And it's such a magnet and it's such a draw for international companies and international leaders to visit Japan. And you can see, if you're Osaka and you're hosting this and you're trying to generate revenue out of this and burnish your image, it's a prime opportunity, especially if you are Ishin, the political party that's centered there. So more and more is going to be coming out of this. It's only 6 months, and they're going to try and squeeze as much as they can out of that. As I mentioned, G7, the central bankers and the finance ministers met Monday and Tuesday. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Mr. Katsunobu Kato did meet with his counterpart, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. There, they made some progress in giving some direction, but not really a whole lot that we can report on. But they did meet. Mr. Akazawa is in Washington, D.C. today. Tomorrow's a national holiday in the United States, so they may or may not get much done. Tuesday will be a real working day, but he's not going to be able to meet with the Secretary Treasurer because he's unavailable. So a little bit of timing issue. The Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, USTR are typically in those negotiations. So I don't think it's one way or the other. These negotiations are going to go on. The conversation that we need to look for is what's going to happen at the G7 meeting. And also that's in June. June starts this next Sunday, actually. And we can anticipate what's going to be happening at the G7 summit right in the middle of the month on the 15th to the 17th in Ottawa. I'm sorry, it's in Alberta. But the real issue is the end of the 90-day tariff recess, or the pause in the tariffs. That ends right around July 9th or 10th. And that is the time that probably the Prime Minister of Japan will go to Washington, D.C. They'll cut a deal. They'll make an announcement, and they're going to push this negotiation probably until that time. So that's the time we want to really focus on. And there's a lot going on until then. So exchange rate policy, tariff concerns, and the ongoing dialogue with trade and the U.S. presence in Japan. particularly with regard to the military presence, was conversation topics that they had on the sidelines. It's going to continue to get a little bit more tough. You might have seen the news that Japan hosted the largest defense materials expo exhibition Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in Makuhari. This was huge. It was attended by more than 8,000 participants, 500 VIPs, so 14,000 people visited Makuhari over these last 3 days. The Japanese companies numbered 167, which is double what it was the last time. So this is a real push by the Japanese government. This event, this 3-day Makuhari event, is pretty much driven by the Ministry of Defense to showcase Japanese technology and prowess in defense material. So that means the missiles, the guidance, the robots, the drones, the co-production of the advanced fighter jets with Italy and England. That was showcased as well. But it was a huge event, and it shows that there's a little bit of a tilt going on in the Japanese presence of producing war material, and they're starting to get into this defense industry collaboration, this complex, the military industry complex, that does produce a good revenue. Everybody pays a high price for war material, and it is replenishable. It's kind of not quite like, but it's kind of like automobiles that the Japanese have excelled in. Langley Esquire, my company, produced a report on that just maybe 2 weeks ago, and it's available to you if you visit the webpage on what is happening with the military industry complex here in Japan and what's going on with Article 9, which is the article that prevents Japan from producing or exporting offensive weaponry. So that's pretty much the real defining character of Japanese foreign policy, and their constitution is Article 9, which has been described as the peace constitution. And it seems like that is being shifted as the United States wraps in America first, pulling soldiers and their global policing assets back to the United States and relying on their allies in other countries for doing their part of it. This is you can take a look at what's going on in Japan and really feel what is actually going on. So we can look forward to more export of Japanese high technology weaponry and the railgun, the drones, the missile technology, many things that you would not consider Japan being an export market for, or exporters to the global market for, are now beginning to take real traction, and something to look forward to. The pension reform bill is under consideration this week. You're going to look forward to that in the lower house. They've got meetings tomorrow. We also did an analysis that was produced actually just 2 or 3 days ago, Maya, on the reform legislation and the pension bill. And for people who are interested in that sort of thing, I think it's maybe a 4 or 5 page analysis. Please reach out to us, or you can visit the webpage where it's available on Insights and publications. There is speculation growing, everybody, that the LDP will accept a coalition partner, just as the reality of passing legislation requires that this wire stays taped to the top. But the LDP and its coalition partner Komeito is incapable of passing legislation without, they're missing 13 votes in the lower house. Without that ability to pass legislation, they are just stuck. And that means that they spend more time talking to people, cajoling them, trading things that they don't want to trade to get legislation through. It is just untenable. And they've ever since October, when the LDP lost its majority in the lower house. They've been confronted by that, and they want out. The Democratic Party for the People under Mr. Tamaki understands that, smells that, feels that. He wants to increase his numbers in the upper house. It is possible that the LDP loses their majority also in the upper house, which means that they would just be just like any other party. They don't have a majority in either house. They are in a weakened position. They can't pass legislation on their own account. So they're probably willing to cut off a good part of their nose to get another coalition partner in. And that looks like it would be Mr. Tamaki's Democratic Party for the People. It could be Ishin. There's still a little bit of time left there, but a lot of horse trading under the covers is going on now. No decisions are being made, but speculation is growing that is going to be the play. Whether the LDP wins in the upper house, that means they stay at parity. Unlikely that for them to increase their numbers greatly, but they have about a 27 member cushion there. There are fewer members in the upper house, and their cushion in the upper house is 27. It would be very difficult for them to lose 27 seats. But still, the real kingpin here is the lower house. The lower house is the one that really defines how legislation is baked, and it defines how the budget is cut. So without that majority in the lower house, even with the coalition partner Komeito, it is very difficult for them to get anything done. They don't want to do that anymore. They want to move forward. Tokyo metropolitan elections are for June 22nd. That is just right around the corner. Let me see. There are 127 seats. Right now, they haven't collected all of the candidates. You have to submit who you're going your candidacy for running, either as an independent or under some sort of rubric of representing a party. As it stands right now, 280 people will be running for that. And as you remember, the last time there was an election for Tokyo, it was for the governor, and they had more than 50 candidates for the governor's seat. So it looks like this is going to be a real fight for the 127 seats that are available. That's the entire seating of the Tokyo Metropolitan Legislature. So there's a lot to look forward to there. I think it's a 12-day campaign. So that will start 12 days before June 22nd. And we will be reporting more and more on that as we approach that time. And it is expected to be a real fight to get that. Let me see. On Friday, the Budget Committee, the most powerful, the largest committee within the Diet. Usually, when you see Diet members talking on television, it is almost always from the Budget Committee room. It is the largest, except for the big room, the plenary room where people vote. The Budget Committee is the most opulent, the largest committee room. They have a meeting every Tuesday, and on Tuesday they summoned, this last week, on Friday they summoned Mr. Shimomura, who is one of the Gang of Five, who was guiding the Seiwakai, the Abe faction, after Mr. Abe was assassinated. And you will remember that this group decided that the decision by Mr. Abe to stop skimming the money that the party was collecting, or the faction was collecting, and distributing it to some of their prominent members was countermanded by this group of five. And to this day, nobody knows who decided that. And so Mr. Hakabun Shimomura was one of the five. He actually lost his lower house seat in the last election. So he is out of the Diet, but he still has agreed to go in. It will be sworn testimony on Tuesday. So please stay tuned on Sunday for our next briefing. We'll report on that. But it will be sworn testimony, so he could be penalized if he doesn't report truthfully. And there are another 4 members that could be summoned. So depending on how Mr. Shimomura does, or how incensed the opposition party becomes, they're just looking for things to throw at the LDP. And with the LDP kind of back on its heels, as I said, and elections coming up very quickly, it is a free-for-all on making them look worse so that your position looks a little bit better, or your candidate looks a little bit better. So it's a real dicey situation. All eyes will be on what's going on in the Budget Committee on Tuesday, and I'll report that to you. So we talked about the change of the cabinet. Mr. Eto, Taku Eto, was the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Forestries, and he made this gaffe on Sunday, and it was reported widely. And the gaffe was basically, let's talk about the rice prices. And he said, well, you know, rice prices, I'm a little bit removed from that. I have so much rice. You know, people, my supporters, give me rice all the time. I've got it in my closet. I've got it under the bed. I could sell the stuff if I wanted to. So rice prices, I'm just kind of struggling with it, just like everybody else. That was interpreted as extremely insensitive to the voters. He was roundly criticized. The Prime Minister stood up for him on Monday, but on Tuesday it was just too delicate. And even a gaffe like this, it's not going to cause a Minister of State to resign. But in the current situation, the Prime Minister just couldn't afford to get one more rock picked up and thrown at him. He's got enough. He's got enough going on. So he accepted the resignation of Mr. Eto and quickly inserted Mr. Koizumi, which is an interesting choice. So this seems to be a separate incident to what might happen when Mr. Ishiba resigns, but it is very closely tied to that. Because if you remember, Mr. Koizumi was in third place when they voted for who's going to be the president of the LDP. They had that election, you might remember, 9 candidates there. And Mr. Koizumi, Konotaro was a candidate, Sanai Takaichi was also a candidate, and Mr. Ishiba. There were 2 rounds. And in the first round, Mr. Ishiba was not number 1. Sanai Takaichi was number 1. Ishiba was number 2. Shinjiro was number 3. So if the same thing happens now, let's say that there is an election for the upper house, whether the upper house is the LDP does well, or it holds it at par, or it does worse, the money is on the new Prime Minister. They're going to change Mr. Ishiba. It looks like it's going to happen like that. And who is going to be in charge, or who's going to be running in that election? More likely than not, it'll be the same 9 or maybe 10. So don't forget that when the Seiwakai brouhaha blew up and people were putting money in their pockets and they reported, and then the Secretary General of the LDP says, you have to report, tell us how much money you got over the last 2.5 years. This has been going on for 15 or 20 years, but let's just say over the last 2 years, how much money did you get and how did you spend it? Everybody complied with that, and the vast majority of people who were doing it were in the Abe faction. There were other people that were doing it in other factions. They saw that this technique worked. People were generating a little bit more money. They were closer to their party. So it's a cool thing to do if you can get away with it. So there were a lot of people that were lambasted for that. Very few resignations, and even fewer criminal complaints that were filed. In any event, there were 4 members of the Seiwakai who were punished and said, you can't hold a party post, you can't have a cabinet position for 1 year because of this, you bad boy, right? That year has ended. And so not only are you going to have the 9 candidates, but you could have some of those very popular politicians who were implicated in the scandal also running for Prime Minister. That means Mr. Nishimura, Mr. Hagiura from the Tokyo district, both very influential, very powerful politicians, even in light of the fact that they were implicated for sticking money in their coat jackets. They're still influential members of the parliament. So it is not the end of the song for them. So that's going to happen. So the question becomes, in the event that that happens, Mr. Ishiba will not run. Mr. Ishiba in the first round received 154 votes. Sanai Takaichi won 181 votes, and Mr. Koizumi got 136 votes. So without Mr. Ishiba running, you've got his 154 votes. Where do they go? And also, Sanai Takaichi against Koizumi. Last time, there was some dynamics going on there. But now, Mr. Koizumi, as Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, he's prominent. This last week, the newspapers were all about Shinjiro. So the fact that he might run against, he will run against Sanai Takaichi, who is probably the front runner, or she was the front runner until Monday. Now it's a real game. Is it going to be Sanai Takaichi? Is it going to be Koizumi? What about Konotara? What about Taku? All of these people who are contenders, now they have to contend with the fact that Mr. Koizumi is looking really good, strangely enough, because of this gift he was given by the Prime Minister. So we don't have a whole lot of time before that election occurs. First of all, it will be the Tokyo elections. Quickly thereafter, the upper house elections. I don't think there'll be a vote of no confidence. There's not going to be a double election. If there was going to be a double election, we would have to know by Tuesday of next week. And the momentum, the precursors are not there. So I don't think there'll be a vote of no confidence of such magnitude that would trigger a double election. So it'll just be the straight election. The Tokyo Metropolitan, which will influence the upper house election. And then after the upper house election, the LDP will figure it's time to switch horses. We need to do something else. We need to get a new prime minister. By that time, the Trump tariffs will have, the pause will have eclipsed. The prime minister will have met with Trump. They will have signed a deal. So that will be history. How that washes out, how the LDP does in the upper house election, who's going to be the candidate for the new prime minister. There's an awful lot going on. So I don't want to speculate too much, but it's always a point of keen interest in this program. I don't hit all of the issues. I'm not up to speed on everything, but I hope that satiates part of your appetite, and we can move into the other issues in the Q&A period and talk about those. And obviously there are people that are far more deeply involved in some of these issues than I am, so we can learn from them as well. So Maya, I'll turn it over to you, and we can get on to the Q&A period after we have a word from our sponsor.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And Timothy, before, yes, I say thank you to our sponsors, I just saw a question from Cam. He says, my wife wants to know if you're really on the boat today or if that's a green screen prop.
Does it look like a green screen?
Well, I don't know actually, but because you move forth and back, if it was a green screen, then it would be quite obvious. But right. Okay. Anyway, so are you on the boat today?
I'm absolutely on the boat. If you'd like to see the boat, I can walk you around, but
right. Okay. So thanks a lot for this. And before we move to the Q&A,
suspicious scam.
Suspicious scam. Yeah. Cam, please don't be that suspicious.
Yeah. Give me a break.
Okay. So I want to say thank you to our other sponsor, Houze. They're also known as Houze Inc. They're based in Yokohama. You can find them online as well at www.com. Oh no, that's www.houze.co.jp, or you can connect with them at webmaster@houze.co.jp. They do custom home design and construction. They do commercial building construction as well. Very customized, beautiful homes and properties for commercial use as well. So if you have any such projects in mind, please reach out to them. You can talk with them in either English or Japanese, because they have bilinguals working there. Again, Houze Inc. in Yokohama. Please do not hesitate to reach out to them and work with them. So, Timothy,
they have bilinguals working there.
Yes, of course they do. Yes. Okay, so thank you for this. I want to start with the questions, and well, some of them came very early this morning. Of course, we are going to address the questions about Nippon Steel and the US, the news that came out just yesterday, a little bit later on. Just let me go through the questions in just a moment, in chronological order of receiving them. So early this morning, we received a question from Diana Green, and it is about the World Health Organization, and well, it refers to the United States leaving the organization. So she says America is focused on MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again. They're looking at chemicals in food research and are researching now how to, well, basically avoid chemicals in food and also soil. And the question is, given Japan generally follows the USA decisions in many areas, what do you think? Will Japan follow this decision of the United States to leave the World Health Organization? And what are the trends there in Japan?
Well, I think the United States, the thing that they have going for them is Bobby Kennedy. So Robert Kennedy is the minister, the state minister for health and welfare. And because of that driving force, I think the United States has decided, and in fact, the United States had a very poor relationship with World Health Organization in any event. The leader was not generally acknowledged as a representing the interests of the United States or of the general global World Health Organization. And throughout COVID, there's been this huge controversy. And I think that's one of the reasons why Trump picked Mr. Kennedy to be his minister. And Make America Healthy Again is a huge, it's building so much momentum now. And it is, Mr. Kennedy is reporting a lot on the rates of autism within children and the reasons for that and the chemicals that are in the food. It is just astounding, some of the things that he's uncovering. So yes, the World Health Organization, as reports indicate, can't survive without the contributions of the United States. And in most things, diplomatically, globally, the United States and Japan are pretty much tied at the hip or bounded at the hip. And whatever the United States begins to do, the Japanese typically follow in one form or another. On the other hand, Mr. Kishida and Mr. Ishiba have strongly said that they want to be a part of the global organizations with NATO, with the EU, that sort of thing. But I think we're really, as Diane points out, we're really in this zone of rethinking all of these international organizations and the fact that they've been usurped by some of the smaller countries. And so it's not really a representation of the voices. It's, you know, every country has a representative there. It's more evenly spread out. So some would say it's fair globally. But I think the bigger countries and those that are contributing the most say we want more of a voice. And since we don't have the leader there, and since the smaller countries always gang up and they vote against us, and we always pay more for it, forget it. We don't want to do it anymore. So I think there's a real we're in the area of a real transformation of global organizations, not just WHO, but also the EU, Maya, NATO. All of these things are really undergoing tremendous shifts. So a rethink is ongoing. I hope that somewhat responds, Diana.
Yes, okay, thank you for this. Diane, if you have other questions or follow-up to this one, please let us know. Another one is about the big news, of course, of President Trump approving of the deal between Nippon Steel and US Steel. And so, of course, it was in Nikkei. Nikkei reported that the deal has been approved. And as Hiroko-san says in Clubhouse, well, basically, President Trump has referred to the deal as partnership and not acquisition. So we are about to see what is going to happen there. So we have a couple of questions there from Cam in Clubhouse about this issue. He says, with U.S. Steel having now cleared CFI US, concerns remain about whether Nippon Steel might eventually move jobs to Mexico or Canada. How can we be sure that won't happen?
Oh, I think the deal is being negotiated now. You can't take this out of context of what's going on with the Trump tariffs, with Mr. Akazawa traveling to the United States. He left yesterday. The phone call with Mr. Ishiba on Friday night, initiated by President Trump. So there's a lot going on there. As you saw when the president visited Saudi Arabia, EU, the United Arab Emirates, and what other country did he visit in the Middle East? He wants trade to be coming. He wants investment into Japan. Into the United States, and it's big ticket investment that he's looking for, moving in employment and manufacturing back to the United States. And I think the U.S. Steel deal is very representative of that push. So, I thought the deal was dead, but that it came up again. It tells you that the president is really making deals to bring this kind of high technology. And that's the promise of the Japanese: bring higher technology to employ more people, to bring the technology that possibly the United States lacks in steel building back to the United States. I don't know about it shipping it off to or the heavy stuff to Mexico, but the United States also wants to focus more on shipbuilding, and they want to share that shipbuilding responsibility to Japan. And as you might not know, Japan used to be a major manufacturer of ships, destroyers, military ships, cargo ships, that sort of thing. They used to be very good at it. There are only a couple of major manufacturers of ships now in Japan. A lot of it is going on in Korea and India. They want to bring that back. And the United States also wants a piece of that. They want to start rebuilding their shipping industry. The funny thing is, though, that sort of technology, it's a tradition. It's not something you can just begin once it's over. In the United States, in the maybe 20 or 30 years ago, people used to be building ships, used to be building yachts, that kind of technology, that kind of tradition was very robust in the United States, as it was here in Japan. But nowadays, there are few people that are spending time on ships, building ships, sailing the water. You can, I'm on the water all the time. And it used to be 20, 30 years ago, Japan had a lot of money, and a lot of people were enjoying and pursuing sailing as a pastime, but also the shipbuilding as well. So getting that started, it just takes an enormous amount of time, technology, people who have the skills and the intuition to get into that industry. So it's a pretty big deal. But I think that this Japan Steel moving into to bolster U.S. Steel is a very good idea. But the devil is in the details. But I think it's a very significant signature move by the Prime Minister and by the President of the United States.
Right. Okay, so thank you for that. And moving down once again in chronological order to Clubhouse. So Cam once again says, okay, does Japan own the oil it uses or rely entirely on imports? And if it doesn't own it, why not invest directly in oil production, like owning the oil molecules? So, Cam, just I believe you probably know this better than me or Timothy, but Japan does have, Japan has made investments into indirect investments actually in developing exploration and production of oil and natural gas. And the country actually has a goal that they want to have, independent sources of oil and natural gas, 30% of their sources should be independent by 2035. And they have an association that actually supports Japanese companies that do research and development of resources. So I believe that you probably know more details about this than we do. So, but thank you very much for the question. And yes, if you have other questions and you can help us with details, please do share them with us. And then I will move on to LinkedIn, I think, or just a moment.
Can I comment,
Okay.
Maya?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Cam brings up an interesting issue about the molecules and about registering or securing the molecules. It's not something that I've heard anything talked about yet. So if you can give us more details on that, that's very interesting. But like Maya said, and as everybody in the world knows, Japan is very scarce in oil production. It does have some coal, but it mostly imports most of the oil that it uses, and oil and petroleum products are a large component of the energy mix of Japan, and that's why the yen-dollar relationship, the oil is always priced on barrels in dollars. So the price of the dollar compared to the yen, it's always a top issue that we talk about. But also, it's a major import from the country, and that's where a lot of the revenue goes. Japan typically doesn't want to import things where money, foreign exchange is passed out. They want to export. And any opportunity, if you're in any business, if you're in drones or if you're in chemicals or anything like that, if the Japanese somehow can do it internally, or they can take inputs to production and produce it and then sell it for exports, that's where the Ministry of Economy and Trade is more focused on. So it's more difficult for exporters in other countries to come into Japan and sell finished products where the money flows out of Japan. It's always a concern, and it's, people complain about how difficult it is to do business here. It's difficult for a lot of reasons, but there's also this structural impediment that we don't want to send money overseas if we can do it internally. And even if the outcome or the product is subprime, it's not as good as the import model, let's bear with it for a little bit so that we preserve our foreign reserves. So it's a philosophical issue as well.
Right.
Maya?
Okay. Thank you for that. Well, moving on to another part of the world. So from Tunes on YouTube, we've got a question: why were the Japanese fired at in West Bank, and what's the feeling about this in Tokyo? So yes. Okay. Sorry, Timothy.
So this is a very recent piece of news. There was a delegation in the West Bank of diplomats, not just Japanese, but they were, everybody's on edge. The delegation was told, you're going into the West Bank. You can see how the Palestinians lived and some of the damage that has occurred there, but stay in the restricted area. Don't wander out. And there were two diplomats, actually one diplomat and one staffer, who were murdered in Washington, D.C. just this last week. I'm sure everybody's heard about that.
You mean Israeli diplomats?
Israeli diplomats.
Yes, not Japanese, okay?
Not Japanese.
Right.
I'm sorry if I misspoke, but two Israeli. One, actually, the staffer was an American citizen working in the Israeli embassy. The other was a diplomat assigned from who lived in Israel, assigned to the Washington, D.C. embassy. Both of them were murdered. So people are on high tension. And when the delegation began to kind of wander off, or somebody was wandering off, some shots were fired into the air. It caused a huge ruckus. It may be a little bit of an overreaction, but nobody was in real danger. They were just kind of, pay attention to our instructions, don't wander off. It was that sort of thing, as far as I understand it. If there's anybody in the audience who knows a little bit more about that or has more up-to-date information, please share it with us.
Right. Okay. And yes, please do share details if you have some of them. And we continue with that DSEI. This is the defense, the expo here that was held in Messe, Makuhari, and Chiba. Quite a few comments about it that, yes, some people are interested in the project between the Japanese and that's the ISAI, that is the Finnish company that creates small satellites with high resolution images. Yes, thank you very much for that, Manabe-san. And also moving down, about food security from Francisco Aceito. Francisco, thank you very much for tuning in. Francisco writes, Japan already doesn't allow many chemical ingredients in foods. We don't have massive junk food aisles. Yep. And Kennedy is aware of it, and I totally agree. We also have RLW. RLW, thank you very much for tuning in once again this week. The question from them is, in the Japanese government, where are conversations actually or actively happening about the need to reassure the public and reinforce current civilian rights and protections in tandem with current rearmament? Because
sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What are the concerns?
The concern is that, Japan is actively rearming.
Okay, rearmament.
At the moment, the armament, yes. And where are the conversations in the Japanese government actively happening to ensure that public and or civil rights are protected?
Okay, this is a great question because it touches on Article 9 of the Constitution. Japan, as everybody knows, has a peace constitution. They cannot rearm. They cannot have a military. They can have a self-defense forces. So what Japan has is not called an army. It's not qualified as an army. It's qualified as self-defense forces, SDF. The Ministry of Defense is exporting some of these material, but they're only for defensive purposes. So even though it's maybe a helicopter, it could be used for offensive purposes, but they're being characterized and sold as, and if there are offensive components, they're added on later by somebody else who purchases those products. But the question that's being posed is a good one. For the Japanese population, do you prefer to keep the peace constitution and stop this kind of encroachment on military hardware and the distinction between an offensive weapon and a defensive weapon? It's really splitting hairs. And if we create distance between what we say in the Constitution and what we do, we become also a target. We become somebody of a potential adversary should there be kinetic action in this region. And this region is rife with strife. North Korea, China, Taiwan, what's going on there? So the general population, so it's difficult. And I think if there's the LDP's promise to all of their members is we are going to change Article 9. We're going to change the Constitution so that we can develop our own military, that we can have an export market. And the dream is let's have an export market that eclipses what we've done with automobiles. We did great with automobiles. If we do military assets as well, just think everybody in the world will want to buy those. And so that was basically the thrust of the policy paper that we circulated just this last week, Maya, on Japan's growing encroachment into military sales and the military industry complex. But the time that the Japanese people have to voice that is in a referendum to change the Constitution. It's very difficult to do, and it would require some kind of existential threat, maybe something from North Korea falling into Japanese waters, or maybe a Japanese self-defense forces individual killed somehow. It would excite the population, and then there would be a discussion of changing the Constitution, and then a referendum where people would vote on that. I think probably they're not going to do that. It's too delicate. So they're just going to continue this small encroachment in little pieces, and maybe stop there. Just be the supporter and the exporter of defensive weapons throughout the entire world. The drones, the helicopters, the destroyers, the ships, the surveillance, and that sort of thing. It seems like that's the direction they're going. But this event in Makahari that I participated in was massive, twice as big as the one previous. So the Japanese are really starting to put a lot of energy and a lot of emphasis on that. And it's not only because of the tariffs or because the automobile industry is probably going to suffer. The Japanese need to develop another industry, and this is an attractive one for them. I hope that responds somewhat to the question.
I think that there is also a nuance here to this question, because the question of civil rights, and this is not expressed here, so I may be reading too much into this, but we well know that in the United States, the struggle is between government and civilians, and then a lot of the debate going on, the public debate going on about actually taking the guns away from civilians, is that the civilians should not or should have means to resist government oppression. I think this is one of the points of the debate, right? So that they're pro-guns in civil. And maybe there is, I may be reading too much into this question, but I believe that there is a nuance to it too here, because in Japan, the civilians are not allowed, I believe by law, by constitution, to possess guns, with some exceptions, of course. And do you think that there is a threat here that as the government is probably moving towards changing Article 9 in the Constitution and moving towards rearmament, is there a danger of civil rights being infringed and then maybe civil freedoms and liberties being in danger, as they are perceived in the United States? This is in this context, I believe.
I don't know. You lost me somewhere there, Maya. The Japanese civil rights with regard to Article 9. It seems to me that...
No, with regard to the government actually introducing more arms into the country, offensive arms and so on. The Japanese civil population is not allowed to possess guns. And I am trying to draw a parallel here, because in the United States, the civilians, many of the civilians who are pro-gun possession are saying exactly this. They have to be armed so that their government is not going to infringe on their liberties. Mm-hmm. This is one of the points of the debate, as if I'm not mistaken, and I believe that I'm not. So I believe that there is a nuance to this question now, which we received from RLW. Is there a danger of something similar happening in Japan? So basically, the government is increasing the number of weapons, the number of guns and everything. Is there a danger of the civil rights and civil liberties actually being infringed because of that? Because the civil population is not allowed to own guns.
Okay, I'm not sure. In the United States Constitution, it is a right to own and bear arms. It is a constitutional right. The
Right.
Japanese don't have that sort of constitutional right. So I don't think that they have an argument that my rights are being infringed because I can't do something I haven't been able to do under the Japanese Constitution. I would find it very difficult to believe that the Japanese population in the next 2 generations would allow for a proliferation of weapons. I mean, even if you're hunting deer or boar on your own property in Japan, the requirements for registration, the training that you have to have, the security that you need to impose on the locking of your guns and ammunition being in a different location and being open for inspection at any time, it's so stringent there are so few real hunters in this country, even though we could use them. There's an overrun of deer, there's an overrun of boar, even bears. And the number of people who could go out and actually do something about it is so very limited. And I think it's really a part of the ingrained culture here. Culture can change, but it would take a couple of generations. And I don't see a drive for that. I think the Japanese abhor the fact that the United States allows people to carry guns, or that there are so many murders that happen there, and that sort of thing. When murders happen here in Japan, it's usually by poisoning or by a knife. Those numbers have actually increased a little bit, but very, very it's almost unheard of for a gun to be involved in a murder in Japan.
Right. Okay. RLW, I hope that this answered your questions and the follow-up to them as well. And yes, so Tomoko-san, yes, I'll read out your question to Timothy in just a little bit. So because we're still on the topic of defense and rearmament. So Benjamin X on YouTube asks, how has Japan's armament strained their trade relationships and diplomatic relationship with China so far?
Yes, that's a great observation. And you could probably add South Korea as well. So the thing about Japan being like a branch of NATO, or being the representative of NATO in Asia, the reason why that has not really taken on a lot of momentum is because the countries throughout the Asia Pacific, you know, have long memories about what happened when Japan did have free reign, and when they were, you know, pushing their weight around, and how aggressive and some would say arrogant they were in treating their neighbors. And so people say, never let the Japanese rise to that level again. And so although it is the major economic power in the region, China still, you know, China is a major trade partner for Japan, and also South Korea. South Korea is in a huge export market for materials, for offensive, for defensive weapons. It has no restrictions on that like the Japanese do in their constitution. But yes, there would be a lot of people that would be really upset if Japan started to build, even not for export, but to build and promote offensive weaponry. That would cause a huge diplomatic row. So I don't think that that's going to happen. I think what's more likely is that they will really focus on the defensive characters of high quality, high technology weaponry, and leave the offensive part to the people who purchase these weapons and add different features onto it. I think that's the direction of Japan. I don't think that they're going to change the constitution successfully unless there's some sort of a kinetic action where Japan is physically threatened, or where there's some deaths involved. And then I think you might see this change very quickly. But the LDP, as I said before, is committed to changing the Constitution, in particular Article 9. It's in their foundation documents. We will change the Constitution. We will change Article 9. So,
right. Okay. Yes. So from Hiroaki, I have never heard any debates in the National Diet changing the amendment of Japanese firearms and swords control law in the context of the amendment of Article 9. So there has been no debates about this. Okay, Hiroaki, thank you very much for the help here. And we've got another comment from Francisco Aceituno. Thank you, Francisco. Francisco writes, neighboring countries to Japan are incredibly hostile, and if you think the young Japanese people, the sense of helplessness in knowing Japan has no right to defend itself. I mean, let's look at this from first principles. Clearly, Japan should have a right to defend itself from hostile neighbors, and that's not even for a war effort. It's the opposite, to encourage peace and partnership. Yes, well,
agreed.
I agree mostly with this statement, with the exception that the neighbors are too or very hostile. We have one or two of them who from time to time show hostility, but it may be just posturing. Forgive me for being too peace-minded, but yes, okay. And here we go with another one. Okay, yes, thank you for this RLW. Yeah, maybe we can address it a little bit later or next time. And well, from Hiroko-san, going back to LinkedIn now, this is a question about the partnership between, well, or as President Trump, referred to the deal between US Steel and Nippon Steel. So Hiroko-san writes, PM Trump refers to this deal as a partnership instead of an acquisition. Is it suggesting that both parties will maintain some level of autonomy there while working together for shared goals? Can you, yes, Timothy, can you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's just, and Cam might have something to offer on this as well, but it's such a sweet deal, investment in the United States, bring technology in, bring huge investment in. U.S. Steel is not at its healthiest. It has its own issues, and the United States wants to be a purveyor of high quality, world-class steel and steel production, and it wants to bring that production back home. So it's a way to piggyback. It's a way to achieve that. But yeah, to sell it at home, I think it would be difficult for the president to say we've sold U.S. Steel. He's got to say it's a partnership. We got lots out of it. The Japanese got lots out of it. We're probably on the positive side of the deal. So I agreed to have that transaction. And look how much money has come pouring into the United States. And look how much production and how many jobs this is going to create. I think that's the flag that he will be waving. And I think, given the momentum just over these last couple of days, it's probably going to be a deal that's going to be signed, and everybody's going to talk about what a victory it was. The prime minister, it's a great boost for the prime minister. So I think that there were some concessions that were reached in achieving that, not only for President Trump, but also for Mr. Ishiba as well. You can't take that out of context. We've got an election that's coming up in less than 60 days.
Indeed. Okay. Thanks. Moving on to the next question from Rio Rhetoric on YouTube. It is, the question is, when Emmanuel was ambassador, the American ambassador in Japan, he pulled strings to ensure trade with Russia ended. Now that he's gone and the US is resuming trade, will Japan follow suit, or will Japan... Let me get to the... So I think that, yes, will Japan follow suit, or will Japan continue to not trade with Russia? I believe this is the question.
Yeah. So just like with the United States, Russia and Japan relations were at one point very friendly. And there is no peace treaty that's signed. Everybody knows that. Russia continues to occupy territory that the Japanese held before the end of the war. They swooped in and they occupied it. And the Japanese said, we're not going to sign a peace treaty with you until you return those 4 islands to us. God damn it. And so that's been going on for 70 years. It's unlikely that the Russians will give it up, ever. So you've got that bone of contention. But trade is different from diplomacy. And I think once the United States cuts a deal with Russia about Ukraine, part of the bennies that are there is, restricting or releasing or limiting the sanctions that have been imposed globally on Russia, but in particular from the United States, or at the leadership of the United States, and also the Japanese follow in suit. So should a deal be done, and I think a deal is on the cusp of being done, although there has been some upsetting news just these last couple of hours about Iran and Russia, and Russia not wanting to accommodate a peace treaty with Ukraine. That's still left to be seen. But, once a deal is done, then yes, sometimes the shackles come off, and Japan is definitely going to be involved in that. Japan imports a lot of LNG from Russia. It is a participant in the production of LNG on the Sakhalin Island. There are two factories there. Japan is a 30% owner and investor in that. And there are other trade and material goods that Japan can benefit from, the fishing and the forestries as well. But it makes a tremendous amount of sense for Japan and Russia to be on better terms.
Well, it does indeed, because they're neighboring countries, and as you say, there is a lot of, there are so many ways they can benefit from trading and investing into each other's economies. So me being a woman, being a mother, I'm always, for peaceful solutions and, just strengthening economic relations rather than preparing for war and becoming more and more belligerent. So,
sorry to interrupt, but one of the things we've noticed from Donald Trump is he is a peace president. He is pushing for peace in all of the areas where there is conflict. And he's been successful in a lot of different areas. He's still got a lot of challenges, but I think he will be known in history as somebody who brought peace to an area of tremendous conflict. And instead of trading wars and missiles and weapons, trading goods and services and creating an era of peace. And I think we're well on the way to getting there. I'm just very worried about the news out of Iran and their insistence that, we'll do a deal with you, but we're going to continue to enrich uranium. So go screw yourself, because you can't tell us what to do. And I think that's the red line that the United States has already said they won't accept. So a little bit worrisome.
Well, that's worrisome. It's worrisome because once again, I think that countries based, in the West and countries in the East, they fail to understand each other's intentions. And they take, more often than not, they take, certain events on face level. And it shouldn't be like that, because, most of the time things are much deeper and much more nuanced, and they also have deeper meanings and interpretations. So hopefully, politicians, diplomats will learn to read better the intentions of their adversaries, or the countries they just perceive as adversaries. All right, so moving on, and then we've got once again Benjamin X commenting, I think changing Article 9 may very well be necessary for keeping a stable balance of power in Asia, similar to how Germany's power currently counters Russia's power, acting as a disincentive against Russian aggression, against NATO countries anyway. Okay, so Timothy, if
you could say that, but also Sweden has a great argument too, right?
Right.
And I think generally speaking, the population of Japan prefers the peace constitution. They're riding a lot on the protection that's guaranteed to them by the United States, but there's a little bit of insecurity there. Will they really come to our aid? Can we depend on them? We benefit from the nuclear umbrella that is provided by the United States, but we pay through the teeth for that. So is that fair? Is this era of peace going to diminish our reliance on the United States and allow us to continue with the peace constitution, because somehow through other techniques or other geopolitical issues, the threat from North Korea, the threat from Taiwan, the threat from China, the other threats have been so much diminished that we do have free and open trade, and people aren't attacking and capturing land and maybe some of the territories that are under some sort of a controversy have been settled or just mollified. There are arguments both ways.
I think there are arguments both ways, and one thing that the Western diplomats and politicians fail to understand is that in Japan moves in a different way, and it is very typical of Asian countries. So before they go to war, they strengthen. War is actually the last resort for them, And instead of doing that, they prefer to strengthen economic relations and economic dependencies. And there are historical, philosophical, and also, let's say, cultural reasons for that. And I believe that the sooner Western politicians and diplomats understand that, the better it will be. Because we in the West are very belligerent. Once again, we take everything on the face level, and that's not what it is in Asia. Well, the Asians are much more nuanced, and they work better with their neighbors, even when those neighbors come across as aggressive. So, in this sense of the word, geopolitically, you will see that Japan, the Japanese government, and Japanese businesses have invested and continue to invest a lot in China.
Right.
And this is a way, the Japanese way of keeping the region, and their relationship with China peaceful. So you can come and argue with me about this offline.
Can I offer a counterpoint there?
Yes, of course,
Not
please.
that I would ever want to argue with you, Maya.
Oh, no, please go ahead and do that.
But the argument here is, now wait a minute. That Constitution, we didn't even write it. You guys wrote it and imposed it on us. So, back off. Let us create our own Constitution based on our own sensibilities and based on the current realities of the world now, not 70 years ago. So it's about goddamn time. Give us back our country. Give us a chance. There's that argument too. And for Japanese males who feel patriotic, who want to contribute to their country, who really feel driven by that, I think that would be a reasonable position of any person who feels love of their country and their traditions, and they want to have something that is their own, not imposed on them. So that's a sentiment that's just not going to go away.
Oh, I agree with you. But at the same time, they continue to invest in China. And they do not invest in military production there. They invest, in other technologies that just serve the populations of the two countries. So this is my point, to which you have your counterpoint, which is perfectly fine. I appreciate that very much, actually. Okay, thanks. And yes, Benjamin X, yes, it is a post-Second World War constitution, very much so. And at the same time, we have to say that, Timothy, as you mentioned, the male population in particular and a very small part of the female population have exactly those things. But I have to tell you that from my experience here, the vast majority of Japanese friends, relatives, acquaintances, colleagues, they are very much into maintaining peace. And yes, so many of them are afraid that if Japan rearms, basically it will be a step towards breaking that history of the past 80 years of peaceful Japan. So we'll see how things go. Hopefully the region will continue to be at peace, and the countries will be collaborating rather than fighting. And it looks like okay, yes, RLW. Well, yes, maybe they don't think so. Maybe we don't see, or we don't really know what they think. Well, it is a tough topic, very much. Dialogue helps to understand things better, yes, and open minds help very much so too. Don't be stuck in your own ways.
One other thing, who is this going back and forth with? Who is this?
RLW, Benjamin X, and a LinkedIn user. So yes, and me, of course.
I really appreciate this conversation,
Yes,
this dialogue. And one of the things you cannot diminish is the role of the emperor. So he has been totally diminished, totally removed artificially from Japanese society, from Japanese politics, from Japanese a lot of things. And that was done by the Constitution. That was one of the conditions for the total surrender and the end of the Pacific War. Should Japan go back and recreate their own constitution, the emperor will come back from that hiatus and serve a more prominent, a more distinctive role, and probably be that kind of escape valve for if there's military going in, or if there's that sort of thing going on. I think having that kind of a leader, that kind of hereditary leadership would distinguish and define Japan far more than we can even conceive of now. So you can't diminish that. And it's just kind of hiding in the background. He was considered God before the end of the war. So of all of the democracies in the world, there's only one other one where the head of state is considered to be a god. And Japan has had that one. Japan has a direct heritage, a direct lineage that far exceeds anything that the Egyptian pharaohs had in going from father to son, father to son. So there's a great deal of pride in that. There's a great deal of it's inertia now, but there's a great deal of energy and cultural power that's contained in that. So you begin to open that box and peel that layer back, and you just don't know what's going to come out of it. But it's a great conversation to have.
Right. Okay, RLW, I'm going to read the question out to you just to make clear, Benjamin. Benjamin wrote, I disagree with the assertion the Western countries want peace less than Eastern countries. I never said that. I'm sorry if I came across with this. My point is that in the Western countries, there are strong industrial military complexes and business, military business is what it is. It wants more revenues, it wants, to sell more weapons. And even though the populations of those countries do not want war, the industrial military complex, yes, it has its own ways. And once again, in what I was trying to say is that in the Western world, we take everything at face value. And because of that, we think that some Asian countries are belligerent as well. That is not true. And in saying so, we come across as belligerent as well. So apologies for not being clear enough. And Timothy, can you hear me? Okay, Timothy probably lost connection. I hope that he comes back. And then Benjamin, no, RLW, I'll read out your question about the North. Just a moment. Thank you very much for keeping on this. I'm trying to find it. Okay, here. Timothy. Okay, Timothy is coming back, I hope. Yes, I found the question here. Okay. Timothy, can you hear me? All right. So if he lost connection and he cannot come back, then RLW, I will certainly convey the question next time, next Sunday morning. So apologies for this. And it seems that in Katsuyama, where Grimm's, Timothy's boat, is parked, if I can say so, the connection sometimes is not that stable, and it happens, but once again, okay, yes, thank you very much, Benjamin. Okay, yes, yes, indeed. I think this is a tough question, and we all need to actually understand how other cultures and nations perceive things as well, while of course we try to also do the best for our own countries. That's very important. And I am not sure that Timothy will be coming back. It looks like the connection is lost for a while. Again, apologies for this, and again, I will keep your questions in mind and convey them next week. On Sunday, we'll be here at 8:20 in the morning. Please be with us. With this, I want to say once again, thank you very much to our sponsors, Kanchu and Houze. And this will be one last shout out for them for today. To everybody here, have a great weekend.